Hello, friends, and welcome to Conversations with Consequences. We are the radio show and podcast of the Catholic Association, where we aim to change the culture one conversation at a time. You can listen to Conversations with Consequences on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. Eastern, or catch the encore at 5 p.m. We are also on Sirius XM Channel 130. Of course, our radio show is always a podcast. Go to thecatholicassociation.org/podcasts or directly to wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm your hostess, Dr. Gracie Christie. Happy New Year to you, our dear friends and listeners. We are so grateful to share time and conversation with you every week, and we wish you all the best in 2024. It was just 1 year ago that on New Year's Eve, we lost the one and only Pope Benedict XVI. He was a saintly man who offered so much to us in his witness and his theology. Edward Penton of the National Catholic Register joins us to remember him a year later and what we are still learning about his life and legacy. But first, with the March for Life quickly approaching, as well as two events on the West Coast, we talk with Eva Muntean about the West Coast Walk for Life, celebrating their 20th year of that event in San Francisco. Lila Rose of Live Action is headlining this year, along with other amazing voices for life. Joining us next on Conversations is Eva Muntean. She's the co-chair of the Walk for Life West Coast, which will be taking place this month, January, on the 20th in San Francisco. And here on Conversations, we tend to be a little East Coast centric, which is wrong of us because the wild, beautiful West Coast of the United States is just as important as the East Coast. And in this pro-life battle that we fight, on all of us on our own levels, right, privately and publicly, the West Coast is very important. And you know, they say what happens in California eventually happens everywhere else, right? That California seems to be out there on the front lines. So thank you so much for joining us, Eva, on Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is a big year for the Walk for Life West Coast. I think it's the 20th year that this will be taking place. Is that true?
That is very true, and we're all quite amazed that we're still here after 20 years, and we're going strong. So yes, we're definitely here.
And it's going to take place on the 20th in San Francisco, and is that always take place in San Francisco? Because that's not a city one associates, right, with a pro-life attitude.
No, it's not. In fact, we've had a couple of city proclamations against us, and the city's not too pleased. But I have to say that doing it in San Francisco, all of us who work on the Walk for Life live in San Francisco, or at least in the surrounding cities. And so we were very proud of the fact that we were able to bring thousands and thousands of pro-lifers together in the heart of San Francisco, and with the complete and total support of the San Francisco Police Department. They have been wonderful to us. They've been with us every single year, and we couldn't do it without them.
Oh, that's really nice to hear that the city people, the people who work for the city, also support you, especially the police department. And I'm sure Archbishop Cordileone, who was a guest on this show just 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he's a friend of the show's, we love to have him on. I'm sure that he's probably a linchpin for the pro-life movement there.
Yes. He's been joining the walk even when he was stationed down in San Diego. He would come up for the walk. So he's been with us every year for many, many years. I don't even know what year he started, but he's definitely a huge support, and we so appreciate him for his continued support. And he always shows up, and he's with us every single year. So we're very pleased.
And how many people do you expect, more or less?
Yeah, that's a really hard call. And we get that question a lot because we don't have registrations. We don't have people don't need to sign up, et cetera. But we're expecting probably between 20 and 30,000. And I know that's kind of a big gap there, but it's just really hard to tell. I mean, we do have about 100 buses already signed up who are coming from different cities around the Bay Area and from out of state even. We've got Oregon, Nevada, Arizona people people coming. So I don't know. I don't know what it'll be, but whatever it is, it usually looks huge.
I know, I've been going every year to the March for Life in DC, even though this year I don't think I'm going to be going because of life being complicated now in January. But it's always very hard to figure out how many people attend. And even there's a complication with the press that they don't like to cover it, and they tend to downplay the numbers. Do you have that issue in San Francisco?
Oh my goodness, yes. We could have tens of thousands, which we normally do, and yet they'll say a few hundred or a couple of thousand or yeah, definitely we get that a lot here. So, but that's okay as long as they cover it and as long as people see that there is a pro-life presence here in the Bay Area and especially in San Francisco. That's the important part.
So you don't feel like you're a tree falling in the forest and nobody hears it. Like when you're in the march, you feel that you are filling the city of San Francisco with the beauty of the pro-life message?
Exactly. That's why we do it. And one of my favorite things about the walk was one time I was giving a talk at a parish about the walk. It was a conference at a parish in Oakland. And right after me, they had a couple of high school students come up who had been regularly attending the walk. And they were to give their impressions and what they thought about the walk. And I'll never forget the fact that each one of them said that it totally energized them. They went back to their schools and started pro-life clubs. They did their essays on the pro-life movement. And those are the reasons that we do this. I mean, it's very important to show, that you have peers that believe in the life message.
I really agree with you, Eva. When I first started going to the march, I went first to our local marches here. I live in Miami, and then started going to the one in DC as well. And I think the most energizing part about it was knowing that my own little private devotion to the pro-life cause was shared by so many fabulous people and so many young people, because it also fills you with hope for the future when you see all those young faces at these events.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And especially the families with the strollers and the young kids and the fact that they're meeting each other and they're making lifelong friends. It is a very powerful reason for all of us to keep doing what we're doing, because all of us who work on the Walk for Life have full-time jobs elsewhere. We do this on a volunteer basis, and those results really keep us motivated.
What do you think the cultural impact is in general, not just in San Francisco, but of these pro-life demonstrations across the country that take place around the anniversary of Roe v. Wade?
Well, it's very important because I think if we stopped these marches, people wouldn't be able to get energized. People wouldn't be able to learn more about what they can do for the pro-life movement. Like, for instance, this year we're going to focus on making sure to press voting. You have to vote your conscience. You have to vote for life. And so it's very important for these events to keep the message alive, to keep the message going, to get it out to as many people as possible. Like I said, we had those students that came to the walk, and yet they went and took it back to their communities and to their schools. The message just keeps growing and growing. So I think it's very important to keep these going.
For so many decades, these marches and all our pro-life efforts really were centered around the injustice of the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973. And now things have shifted radically. Tell us how do you see that shift? What has changed, and how should our approach be changing as well as pro-life people?
Well, I, along with the rest of the pro-life movement, was very excited and happy when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. It was a huge, monumental win for the pro-life movement. However, ever since then, there's been so many ballots in different states, and they've all failed in terms of protecting life. So there is still so much work to be done. In fact, it seems to me like the work just should increase, and we need to do more, because apparently on the low grassroots level, we're not winning yet. So we need to keep the pressure on. We need to keep the message out there that abortion is not a solution to a crisis pregnancy.
We have the Supreme Court is going to be looking at very soon the issue of chemical abortion, and that's that's something that we all have to consider when in our pro-life struggle, because abortion is becoming more and more an issue of medication and very early in the pregnancy. How are you addressing this at all in in this year's march in the West Coast?
Not this year, but we have been planning and thinking about that because, especially here in California, Gavin Newsom has made this a sanctuary state, and he wants to be able to ship anywhere in the country, in fact, anywhere in the world, medication from here and so it is definitely a huge issue, especially for us here in California. We will be addressing it. We're thinking about how to do it, but it's our focus this year is going to be more about abortion hurts women and for the vote, to get the vote, because it is an election year, and it's very important that we attack this issue on all fronts, including our politics. So that's our focus for this year.
So tell me, who will be headlining your walk?
Well, we have Lila Rose. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with her. And we're very excited to have Kaya Jones. She was an original member of the Pussycat Dolls singing group. A lot of people haven't heard of them, but but I know at my age, I have heard of them because they were.
Yes, I know exactly who they are.
Yeah, because they sold like 15 million albums and they were very big in the day. And she's going to be one of our speakers because every year we have at least one person give their abortion story. And Kaya has had 3 abortions, and she has had a major conversion, and we can't wait to hear her story. She's going to be telling us about that. And then we also have Kimberly Henkel. She's going to be talking about fostering and adoption, because not alone has that, it's a personal issue with her. She's adopted 4 kids, and she is going to be talking about how important it is for us to step out in faith and foster and adopt children. And of course, every year, he's one of our staples. Reverend Clenard Childress will be with us. He's always gets the crowds going. He's always the last speaker of the rally, and he's just an amazing speaker. So he's going to be our 4th speaker. And we're going to give the Gianna Mola Award to Father Joseph Fessio, who has been with the pro-life movement since he was a young priest and been in jail. He's our chaplain, and so we're going to be giving him the award this year.
Well, that sounds like a really well-rounded program. You're hitting all the major things. But let me bring you back to Kaya for a moment, because
sure.
I have always found the stories of grief and then eventual recovery from post-abortive women to be very moving. And it sounds like you include that every year. Why do you feel that this is so important to include?
Oh, my goodness. We started the Walk for Life 20 years ago with the theme of abortion hurts women. We were a sister event to the March for Life, which focused mainly on the political side. And we wanted to do something out here that was always on a Saturday. They were always on a weekday. So we were doing like a sister event. And from the very beginning, every single year, we have a story about somebody how much abortion has hurt them. And that's been our main focus for the entire 20 years. And when I heard Kaya's story, I heard her on a podcast a while back, and I knew immediately that I had to try to get her, because she had one at 16. She had one while she was with the Pussycat Dolls, and then she had one from rape. And so and then she had such a beautiful conversion. And it's so important to hear from the people that abortion affects, that what it has done to them and their lives and their families. And so I'm very, very adamant that every year we have one of them, at least one story about how abortion hurts women.
So you're not a believer that abortion is a liberating experience and that it's something that lifts women to equality with men?
No.
Why do you think? Now you're a person who's obviously been, intensely involved in the pro-life movement for a long time. Why do you think that idea resonates so well with people?
Well, I think that our culture is so promiscuous nowadays, and people want to be quote unquote free. And so when they do something that results in of a life, they want the freedom, quote unquote, to keep partying and keep I don't know. It is, to me, it's so unwarranted, because even if you get pregnant when the crisis pregnancy, there are so many options out there. There are so many options for that child. Murder shouldn't be one of them. Killing that child should not be one of them. I mean, there are so many people waiting to adopt. There's so many religious orders, like Mother Teresa. She said, any child, bring any child to me and I will take them. She has houses in every state. She has houses in every country. So right there, just her alone makes abortion unnecessary, because you just give give birth to your child and then give it to a loving home. Anyway, I'm sorry, I go off on a soapbox here.
No, it's such an important thing to keep reiterating, that abortion is the way that women end up paying for the promiscuity of men. Right? And
exactly.
It's almost like men. It's almost, I don't want to bash on men, because I love men, and we all have amazing husbands, brothers, fathers, sons.
Yes.
But it's almost like the unscrupulous men of the world won the feminist revolution, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, we'll support you, but go be free, but then you'll have to pay with your own children. And with the grief that you carry around with you for the rest of your life, and your lack of belief in yourself, which is what I've heard from many post-abortive women who have, they no longer believe in themselves as moral agents, because they succumbed to that, or they fell for that terrible lie that the culture feeds them.
Exactly. And there are so many women out there who have had abortions and then were not able to conceive again. So they carry around with them the weight of, that's the child that I could have had. Mm-hmm. Or so many different scenarios like that gives so much grief to women who have been through this. And it's, when I hear women who have had abortions who celebrate it, I just know deep down it's not true, that they're hurting as much as the next person. They're just trying to cover up the pain with the quote unquote freedom that the abortion industry provides for them. So it is a horrible thing that we kill our children in this country and around the world, and it's child sacrifice, and plain and simple.
I think it's also important to talk about men suffering. I've talked to men who have suffered terribly after abortion, especially when it's completely taken away from they have no, the decision is out of their hands entirely, and they lose a child like a woman loses a child. Have you had that experience too?
Yes, we've had speakers at the walk before. We had couples before who addressed the fact that the father had no say in it. They had no say at all in about what happened to their children, and that's a crime too. It's just on so many fronts that abortion hurts families and people all over. So yeah.
You mentioned the Reverend Childress. Is it Childress or Childress? How do you pronounce that? Childress. So he's the founder of blackgenocide.org.
Yes.
Tell us about that, because I'm very interested in that subject.
Yes, well, I mean, he speaks out very eloquently and powerfully about the fact that the majority of abortions are performed on the Black women, and disproportionate to the white women. So he tries to point out, because the Planned Parenthood and a lot of abortion providers target minority neighborhoods, and that's where they set up shop. That's where they go for the poor, the poorest of the poor. So yeah, he's very eloquent. He makes so many great points. He has all the facts and figures. He's a leading voice in the fact that abortion mainly hurts Black women.
That's something that flies in the face, right, of the cultural push, which is to say that abortion is even more liberating for women who are marginalized for their race, or marginalized for their social status, or because they're poor. But he must make a very convincing case that that's actually not true.
Exactly. And if you listen to some of his past talks, he makes that point so eloquently and so powerfully because he has all the statistics and he has all the stories of the African American community's pain from abortion. And so yes, that's why we have him back almost every year. I think he's only missed 1 year out of our 20. So he's been with us since year one.
It makes you wonder, right? In a culture in the American Black culture, how much pain there is to go around, and how great the ramifications must be of such an abortion holocaust that goes on every year in that community.
Exactly, and he's the leading voice in the fight against that. So we've got to do our part and support him and all others who are working on tearing down that wall. So yeah.
Now, you also mentioned Dr. Kimberly Henkel, who is going to be talking about fostering and adoption, and obviously adoption is the loving option, and that's my favorite sign that I always carry. I have an adoptive child. And one of my children is adopted. And when we go to our marches, that's the one she carries. And
that's beautiful.
It is. And she's been going, we adopted her from China. And when she was just a little girl in a stroller, I think we'd only been home from China for a couple months. Yeah, because we brought her home in October, and I took her to her march in January. And there she was in the stroller at her first march. And how wonderful it feels, right? When you know that a child that their life could have been ended in violence is instead being loved and cherished and raised in a loving family.
Exactly. And there's just so many children in need of that, of people to step up to foster or adopt or both. And it's just, I think her message is very powerful because she's done it herself. She's gone through that, and talks about the fact that giving a child a supportive family situation makes all the difference in the world in the child's future life. And if we could take all the children at risk and give them good, loving homes, the society would be hugely benefited by that. So, yeah, she has a very important message.
We have a strange schizophrenic society right now where people are ordering children to order through surrogacy. And at the same time, there are children languishing without homes. I find that very schizophrenic and unpleasant to think about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How wonderful that you are focusing on adoption and foster care on that. Now, tell me about Lila Rose. What will she be talking about, do you think?
She'll probably be talking about all the current events in the pro-life movement because she's up front in everything the pro-life movement, all the cause of the pro-life movement, because she's part of Live Action. And so she'll probably give us an update on everything that's happening through their organization. Basically, I'm giving her free rein, so I'm not sure exactly. Yeah. She's a great speaker, and we're really looking forward to see what she has to share with us.
So the West Coast Walk for Life is having its 20th episode, its 20th journey. What has changed in these 20 years? Have you been growing? What's different over these 20 years?
Well, we started out with 7,000, and that was had a lot to do with Gavin Newsom because he was a mayor at the time, and he came out so strongly against us in the media that all the pro-lifers got to hear about it.
He didn't want you to march, or he was sort of casting aspersions on you?
He was very upset about the fact that we were doing a walk for life in San Francisco, in his city, because at the time he was mayor. And they had official city proclamations against us. They had a rally where him and Kamala Harris were speaking at the rally opposing us at the same time as our rally. And then they started walking to interfere with our walk. This was the first year. And they were outnumbered. I mean, we were double their size, and they were so nasty. It was so horrible that even Planned Parenthood and now and all the organizations who supported that first counter rally, they decided they'd never again. They've never ever supported coming out against us since then, because they looked so bad with all the cursing and yelling and throwing things and sexual gyrations. And here's all these beautiful little families and beautiful, gentle souls walking, and it was horrible. The opposition. So they've never come out officially against us ever since that first year. After that first year, we grew quite a bit every single year. Before COVID, we were up to like 50,000, and of course, COVID shut down everything. I think, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think we were the only walk that continued even through COVID. So we were very surprised. We had a few thousand people join us during COVID to Walk for Life, and after the walk, we're now growing back up. But it's taking a while. I think people are still scared. People are still weary of all the protesters and COVID, and so I think we're now between like I said earlier, between 20 and 30,000. But every year we're growing back up. So, but to me, it's not even about the numbers. To me, it's just that the people who do come, that they get something out of it, that they take it back with them to where they can proclaim the message to wherever they came from.
Well, Eva Muntean, co-chair of the Walk for Life West Coast, I wish you the best, and we will be accompanying you on January 20th in our prayers and in our hearts for all these wonderful changes of heart for everybody who sees you and feels that love for the pro-life movement, for children, for mothers, for fathers, for families. So thank you for being a part of that and making it happen.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the show, Edward.
Thank you, Casey. Good to speak with you again.
Here in the United States and across the world, in fact, all of us were very much aware that Pope Benedict's health was failing. Of course, he's very elderly, so every day is a gift. When people get to be that age, we're all mourning all across the world of the great man, the great saint. I think we can almost surely call him that. Tell us I know you're in Rome, tell us what is the situation in Rome? What's the feeling in Rome around the death of this great man?
Well, I think a mixture of both solemnity and also a great sort of appreciation and in some ways joy, looking back on his life and the great legacy that he leaves the church. There's a sort of mixture of sadness and joy at this event.
And his body is still lying in state as we speak?
It is, yes. It's been there since Monday morning and will be there until 7 o'clock tonight on Wednesday.
Okay, this recording, we're recording this in advance. This will air after the funeral, and the funeral is on Thursday the 5th. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's on Thursday the 5th.
Yes.
And so what do you expect to see with the funeral? What kind of funeral will this be? Maybe a lot of this has been hashed out in the news, but maybe many of our listeners are not aware of the details. Maybe by then they'll have seen it. So maybe this is old news. Yeah. But what do you think is going to happen around the funeral?
Well, it's going to be, as the Vatican spokesman said, Matteo Bruno, it's going to be a simple and solemn ceremony. It's not going to be particularly traditional, surprisingly enough, given despite Benedict's strong preference for tradition. But it's going to be much more of a sort of simple affair. It's not going to be the Roman canon of the Mass in the funeral. It's going to be Eucharistic Prayer 3, which is much shorter. So it'll be fairly straightforward and short. And a few other trappings that would normally be given to a pope at a funeral have not been included because, of course, he's not pope anymore, and he wasn't for the last nearly 10 years of his life.
Is this the first time that the Church has laid to rest a Pope Emeritus?
It is, I believe. Well, there was, of course, Pope Celestine V back in the 13th century, who was buried by his successor, but he was actually, unfortunately, kind of resigned in disgrace, although he was later rehabilitated and later made a saint. But that means that his funeral, I don't think, was even public. I believe it of course, happened, but it wasn't made public.
Oh, so that was a long time ago. So we're forging new ground here, but it's ground that we may have to walk again, correct? I mean, as people are living into more advanced ages, we may find ourselves with the same situation, even with Pope Francis or his successor, where somebody with all the desire that they might have in their heart to continue in that position, they may not be able to. That's
right. I mean, there's often talk about this becoming a more regular sort of sequence of events because, as you say, people are getting older and they live longer in a way that they didn't before, and so. And also often now, those who do live longer tend to perhaps lose mental abilities and certain consciousness or awareness, and so that could be a problem going forward. And I think, in a way, Benedict kind of laid the pathway for that possibility, at least for popes to retire. So certainly that's something that Francis has always said, and said that he may do himself, although I think it's unlikely at this stage that he would resign.
I have heard some people be very critical about Pope Benedict since at the time of his death and since then, and it saddens me very much. They rake up old accusations of him. I don't even want to mention it on the air, but terrible things about him participating in the Nazi system when he was very young. Other things like saying that he should have stayed on, he shouldn't have resigned. What do you make of this, I think, sort of shameful raking up of ugly things after a man's death?
Well, I think it's a great shame that even during his life, Benedict, as Archbishop Genswein, his long-serving personal secretary, has said, was so often misunderstood. And also that he drew enemies precisely because he upheld the Church's teaching. And just as Christ did, people hate that. Some people hate the truth. The devil hates the truth. And I think a lot of that opposition to him has come from the simple fact that he did uphold the teachings of Christ in a very faithful and strong way. And he also had a great innocence about him, which I think also seems to attract at least a certain opposition, unfortunately. He had a very much childlike innocence, which was very a mark of his holiness, and that too, I think, provoked a devilish reaction, if you might say. Archbishop Genswein has also said in recent days that the devil was very much present as an attack on Benedict throughout his life, certainly through his later life, and as I say, I think that's probably the reason why.
It must have been extremely painful for him for that kind of martyrdom. It's a kind of extended martyrdom, to hold fast to the truth, to be so firm and so clear about the teachings of Christ and the beautiful way that the Church explains them and holds fast to them. And how we can also, and I think what was, for me, was very special about Pope Benedict was the way that he was able to explain the way that we can live in a world that's not allied to the truth, but live in truth, and also with tolerance, right? To have tolerance for others who cannot comprehend.
Exactly, and that was his great strength. I mean, he was a great teacher. He was able to convey these very complex, or rather detailed teachings of the Church in a profoundly simple and profound way, and in a beautiful way too. He was very much interested in conveying the beauty of the faith, the beauty of Christ, the beauty of truth, of course. And I think that resonated with a lot of people today who, in societies which have so often forgotten that God exists or live as if God doesn't exist, need that. And that for them, he was a shining light, a real light for the world in the way he taught. And as the world becomes more dark in light of secularism and turning away from God, so his teaching became even brighter. And I think that's what we're seeing now as we reflect on his great teaching legacy.
He started his pontificate very much against what he considered the greatest scourge of our times, which is moral relativism. He spoke out against it right away. Although, looking back at what he had written before, he was a prolific writer, obviously, before he became Pope, and an amazing theologian. He was always very much writing about that the terrible conundrum of living in a world that's ruled by moral relativism, and how it disassociates us from the truths that we need to sustain our spirit and to sustain all the wonderful things about being a human, right? Like our families and the way that we can love each other and help each other get through this life. But he started his pontificate very much denouncing moral relativism and its dangers. They called him the Pope's Rottweiler before he became Pope. Why? Right. How much will he be missed just because of that clarity? Because I think since Pope Francis became Pope, that shining light of clarity has been missed by many Catholics.
Yes, it has. That's exactly, and I think that was his, as I say, his great legacy was that ability to transmit the faith. As you say, in a very relativistic age, he was very strong on that particular element, and one of his greatest focus or focal points was the fact that faith goes together with reason, and there's a harmony between the two. For him, you cannot have one without the other. Faith and reason go together, and I think that was a great part of his teaching which he left behind. And also, it was a big part of his famous Regensburg speech, which of course upset the Islamic world. But his main point in that speech was really to say that as the further the West goes along the path of reason without faith, the more it's going to clash with Islam, which is more faith than it is to do with reason. And so he foresaw that clash becoming ever greater because of those two diverging philosophies that have been sort of dominant in both the West and Islam. So he had these great insights which were very relevant to our times, and I think some prophetic. He was very much a prophetic voice for our times.
I reread his Regensburg speech at his death because I remembered very vividly the way that he was attacked for that. The way that he was denounced all across the world, blamed for any possible terrorist attacks that might take place, and the clash of the Christian and Islamic civilization going forward was all going to be laid at his feet because of this speech at this very academic and very thoughtful and very deeply theological speech that he gave at Regensburg, and it occurred to me that it was, as you say, he addressed the issue of Islam and faith and reason, but also it was very prophetic for us in the West because so much has happened since then that shows us that we have, by abandoning faith, in a sense, we've also lost reason, because so many things that are being told to us that we must believe and that we must acknowledge are very far away from reason. The things that we know by logic, that we can sense with our eyes and understand just by virtue of having an intellect.
Exactly. I think when he said reason in that context, he meant not really a true reason. The true reason comes with when it's joined by faith. And I think his view was that when you just base it on scientific facts or scientific reasoning, it's inadequate for understanding our meaning of life and so many other questions. So yes, exactly, and that shows just how I think he went deeper and showed this importance of faith and reason together. And it was something that I think Western society particularly is lacking.
Yeah, because it's one he was saying when faith and reason are enjoined, right? Reason leads to faith. Right. They're not opposing. They're very much working together. And God is reason, right? He's the great logos. And then but when we abandon faith, we even lose our reason because we stop making those connections between what we can see and taste and prove and with experiments and the great reason behind all of it.
Yes, exactly. I think, I'm not an expert in this area, but we need to talk to a philosopher or theologian about this. But I think his emphasis was on that it leads to positivism, that leads to a certain scientific reasoning, which, as I say, it's inadequate. It doesn't go to the depths of reason and how reason should truly function, and that can only come when it's backed by Christian faith and the faith in Jesus Christ.
Is Rome right now very full of pilgrims? I know Rome can get very busy around these big events. Are you
Yes.
seeing that fullness and excitement in Rome?
Very much so, yes. There's a great number of people in Rome right now. And I think from noon today, this is, we've had so far 160,000 visitors by Wednesday lunchtime. Just over 3 days to pay their respects to Benedict's body
and where exactly has his body been lying in state?
So it's been in the front altar, just in front of the main altar in the Basilica of St. Peter's Basilica. The altar of the Confession is called the Baldacchino, the very big central altar of the church. He's just in the front of that. Which is the same place that they placed John Paul II to after he died.
Oh, so I can just imagine the throngs outside in Great St. Peter's Square. How wonderful that must be to see.
Yes, and the long queues and also a lot of journalists here. I think 1,000 have been accredited to cover this, so it's going to be very much well covered in the media, I think. But what's interesting, Gracie, is that the Vatican is only officially invited two delegations from Italy and Germany, but all the other heads of state are free to come on a personal basis. So they're not being invited in a state official way.
One of the visitors that's coming in an unofficial basis to the funeral is Cardinal Zen. And you've written a lot about him. Apparently he was given clearance so that he could attend the funeral, traveling from Hong Kong. Cardinal Zen pointed out in a recent piece, he wrote about Benedict's stance on China, how important Pope Benedict was to the fate of Catholics in China, and that he feels that Pope Benedict will be a powerful intercessor for China in heaven. What do you expect from Cardinal Zen's visit?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of happiness that he's coming, because it was difficult for him to get out of China, given that he's been in court lately for alleged crimes which he denies, and was found guilty of these crime of fraud, which he denies and strongly denies, and so are his supporters. But yes, it's very interesting that he has come. I think he felt he wouldn't be back to Rome. He's now 90, so I think he'd already made his last trip. So what will be interesting, I think, when he does come, is whether he'll get a meeting with Pope Francis, who famously denied him a meeting the last time he came. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But yes, Benedict was very, very close to China. He, of course, composed the famous prayer for the Chinese Catholics back in I think it was 2009. And instituted a World Day of Prayer for China. So yes, Cardinal Zen is very close to him and found him a great supporter of Chinese Catholics. So yes, it's great that he's coming.
Well, thank you for your time today, Edward. We'll continue to keep Pope Benedict in our prayers, and we'll ask for his intercession. And thank you. Please make sure to our listeners to keep up on all things Vatican with Edward's analysis at ncregister.com, reporting always from Rome. Thank you, Edward, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Gracie. Happy New Year to you too.
Every morning, the Catholic Association reviews all the latest news and sends our subscribers a carefully curated collection of the most important news of the day. Items are specifically selected for a smart Catholic audience like you. Don't let the world take you by surprise. Subscribe to our daily media roundup at thecatholicassociation.org. And now, Father Roger Landry offers us, as is customary, a short and inspiring homily to prepare us for this Sunday's Gospel.
This is Father Roger Landry, and it's a joy to have a chance to ponder with you the consequential conversation God wants to have with us this Sunday, as the Church celebrates the solemnity of the Epiphany of the Lord, His manifestation to all the nations, represented by the wise men coming from afar. In recent days, the importance of wisdom has become even more obvious. We've had the presidents of two of our most prestigious universities resign because of their incapacity to see and state the obvious and condemn Hamas's October 7th terrorist attacks, any and all calls for the genocide of Jews, whatever the context, and anti-Semitism, blinded by modern Marxist ideologies that have infected many places of higher education. We've likewise had a senior Vatican official charged with defending and promoting the Catholic faith unbelievably release a declaration the week before Christmas on blessing same-sex couples and those in irregular situations, changing the focus from the good news of great joy for all the people to the obviously confusing headlines of whether the church is changing her teaching on sexual sin and marriage. And in a presidential election year, many are more prone to see the evident lack of wisdom in many of those competing for our support and in their policies and ideas. All of these situations and others reveal the crucial importance of wisdom in an age in which political, cultural, and even religious leaders are increasingly confused. That's why it's so important for us in the Solemnity of the Epiphany to learn from the men whom tradition has always called wise, to go on pilgrimage with them to Bethlehem, to learn from them invaluable lessons, not just about how we're called to relate to the coming of God into the world, but on how to grow wise. We can ponder 5 lessons. The first thing we learn from the wise men is the importance of seeking God. To be wise, we must look at things from God's perspective, and that requires effort. When the wise men saw the star at its rising, they not only interpreted that God was trying to communicate something to them in general, but that God was specifically heralding the birth of the newborn king in the East, who would be a universal king. That they had picked up from the Sibylline prophecies. 2,000 years ago in the deserts of the Middle East and on the seas, people were highly dependent on the fixed stars in the sky as references for their direction. They firmly believed that God had made them this way for this reason. Whenever anything happened in the sky that was new, like the appearance of a comet or a meteor shower, or planets or stars shining more brightly, the ancients thought that it had to bear some message from God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. When they saw the star at its rising, they didn't respond as curious astrologers, but as those who hungered to find what they sought. Led by the star and their simple trust in its supposed meaning, the wise men went on a journey toward the Holy Land. We don't know how long their pilgrimage took, but the Gospel gives us an indication that it wasn't brief. After Herod asked them the exact time of the appearance of the star, and then a short time later, after they didn't return to him, he proceeded to kill every boy in Bethlehem under 2 years of age. So the time of their preparation and journey to get there probably took 18 to 24 months. Whether they walked or had the help of animals, we don't know, but they came. They made a journey of many months each way because they believed God was speaking to them through the star. Anyone seeking wisdom must be willing to make such a journey, seeking God in the truth too. The second thing that the wise men show us is that the search for wisdom is a pilgrimage we're called to make together. The wise men were ready to move, even though they must have had good lives where they were, since they could afford a long journey and precious gifts at their arrival. They counted being with the newborn universal king more important than staying where they were. They were willing to leave everything behind and make a long, difficult journey, following the star they had seen in the east. But they grasped that this was an intellectual and existential journey they were not supposed to make alone. They knew that in order to make the destination, they needed each other. But more than that, they wanted to journey together. Likewise, the search for wisdom and the Catholic pilgrimage of faith are not do-it-yourself things. In an age of individualism, we recognize we need others' help. Just as much as the pilgrims on the Camino de Santiago, we need our fellow travelers. Spouses need each other. Children need their parents. We all need our friends and spiritual siblings. Parishioners and priests need each other. The Church's pilgrimage is a family journey, done in communion, trying not to leave any family member behind, but getting everyone moving, which we help each other to find God, learn better who we are, and how we're supposed to live. Third, the journey of the Magi shows us that we need to be guided on the path of wisdom and faith. They got to Bethlehem because they allowed themselves to be led by the star. They were attentive and obedient to the guidance God had given. Likewise, we all need to be docile to guidance. God guides us, of course, in sacred scripture, which we should study more assiduously than the wise men study the stars. God guides us through the church, and hence the catechism is a compass for our conscience. A third guide are the lives of the saints, those who have made the journey, who show us the way and accompany us by their prayers. All of this guidance can be surprising and opposed to conventional wisdom that often is not wise at all. When the wise men found Jesus, he was far from what they must have been expecting. They naturally were anticipating finding the newborn king in a palace, not in a stable, wrapped in royal purple, not in swaddling clothes, surrounded by courtiers, not by animals and shepherds. And when they found him as he was, they didn't turn back. They were willing to let their own categories be changed by God rather than fit God into their own categories. They needed to change their ideas about God, man, wisdom, and power. In short, they needed to change themselves and see that God's power is not like the powerful of the world. His wisdom is not like the wise of the world. Likewise, throughout life, we must learn through God's guidance that God's ways are not as we imagine them or might wish them to be, and learn how to conform our ways to his, especially when he asks us to model our life on the mystery of his life-giving cross. Fourth, the wise men teach us about the importance of adoration. The greatest gift they gave the baby Lord Jesus was not gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but themselves. See, Matthew tells us that they prostrated themselves and did him homage. They adored him. It's not enough to know about the Lord or to meet the Lord. They needed to love him with all their mind, heart, soul, strength, time, and gifts. If the fear or the awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, the true sacrificial love for the Lord is the way wisdom grows. This leads us to the subject of prayer and adoration. The same Jesus before whom they prostrated themselves comes to our churches on the altar and waits for us in the monstrance in the tabernacle. He wants to fill us with his wisdom. Like the wise men, to grow in this gift, we must prostrate ourselves in humble homage before him, placing ourselves and our gifts in his service, prayerfully receiving the blessing he seeks to give us in his humility and majesty. Lastly, the wise men show us how the encounter with Christ is meant to change us. St. Matthew says that the wise men returned home by another route, which many saints and scholars have said points to far more than a detour to evade Herod. It indicates rather that they returned changed, different than they arrived, converted more and more to the new king's ways and categories, to the way of wisdom, of faith, of Christ-like love. The Lord similarly wants to change us. Every time we journey to Mass, every time we come together with others on the pilgrimage to bring him our gifts and sacrifices, but especially the offering of our whole life in prayerful homage, we're supposed to leave changed, made wiser by the word we've heard, changed by our truly praying the collects and petitions of the Mass, transformed by becoming one with the Lord on the inside. Every Mass is meant to change our life forever, send us back by different routes, transformed for the better, following no longer our own way, but following Jesus' own path up close. This is what the world most needs. As Christ transforms us, he sends us out to transform the church, the culture, and the world. Our contemporaries need us once again to be the wise men who show them how to live, who indicate to them how to become wise. We do this by pointing to the star of the tabernacle lamp and to the altar candles, where the continuous epiphany of the Lord takes place, and by encouraging those we know to join us on the journey to find Christ and enter into life-changing communion with him. God is calling each of us to be those modern Melchiors, Balthasars, and Caspars, and to journey together. And he wants to give us at Mass the wisdom, grace, and help he knows we need to fulfill this mission. So we prepare to fall to our knees this Sunday before the same Lord, before whom the wise men prostrated themselves as a poor, vulnerable infant wrapped in swaddling clothes. God wants us, like them, to discover the glory of God in the highest and the true road to peace on earth. Let us, therefore, go with haste to Bethlehem, and let us bring the lessons of Bethlehem to a world that needs that wisdom. Come, let us adore him. God bless you.
Thank you, Father Landry. To hear more from Father Landry, check out his website at catholicpreaching.com, and you can also catch his writings at EWTN's own National Catholic Register. A big thank you to all our listeners for joining us. I hope that this show was helpful. I hope that it gave you more peace and more hope and more joy, and you go with our prayers.